Welcome back to Gaelic Games Fan TV. Kildare are the Tailteann Cup champions. They have beaten Limerick 124 to 219 in Croke Park. In the end, it's a 2-point win and a narrow 2-point win at that for Kildare. They get over the line in the end. And look, that was the most important thing from it. That was the most important thing from a Kildare perspective. And I think from a Limerick perspective, look, they'll be devastated, they'll be disappointed in regards to how this game finished in the end. That chance at the end, I mean, a goal chance, and it was incredible to watch because Kildare were 4 points up, with about, I think, 2 minutes left. And obviously, with the new rules, you have the hooter and everything else, you're thinking, Kildare will be fine here. But they, concede sort of nearly 2 goal chances, really. One of them ends up being a free, they give away the free, obviously, towards the end. Limerick popped that over to make it a 3-point game. And then that goal chance, big save by Keane Burke. Massive save. Otherwise, look, it is going to extra time. And whilst you would expect with the quality that Kildare football have in terms of their forwards, I think they were by far the better side. It was a very even game. It was even in some regards in terms of the scoreline, but I thought Kildare have far better forwards, and I think we saw that in the game with the likes of Dara Kirwan, Ryan Sinky, Alex Byrne as well. Dara Kirwan in particular with a phenomenal game. I think 8 points in total. Like, he was absolutely brilliant. And Kildare do have a phenomenal footballer in him. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, very enthralling game, entertaining, brilliant game of football. Very much in line with how Gaelic football has been this year. Like, you were thinking a little bit that it could be a little bit edgy. It could be a little bit nervy. It's a big game, obviously, for both sides. In terms of, Kildare having won major silverware with, in Croke Park in a long time. In terms of championship silverware, you'd have to go back as far back as their Leinster football championship. And whilst, yes, look, people will look at the Tailteann Cup and not put it in that same bracket, and that's fair enough. You looked at the Kildare players a little bit at full time, and their reaction probably told you that. I think this Kildare team and management and everything else, look, they expect to be achieving bigger things. They want to be doing better things. I think they are an All-Ireland level team. They were in the All-Ireland series a couple of years ago. The only reason why they've been in this competition over the last 2 years is because there has been a drop in terms of football. But look, with the young players coming through, the under-20 success, like, times are bright, times are positive right now for Kildare football. But look, you have to commend Limerick as well. They were absolutely brilliant. They battled. They showed tremendous heart. The goals that they scored, obviously, as well. And the chances at the end. And look, Limerick go into Division 3 next year, in my opinion, with a great chance of possibly even getting promoted. They'll be eyeing up promotion, in my opinion. If they are in the Tailteann Cup next year, which you'd probably expect. I mean, look, we'll see what happens with, championship draws and everything else. Maybe Limerick could end up on a side of the draw, a bit like what we saw with Clare, and maybe get into the All-Ireland series that way. But if they are in the Tailteann Cup next year, they'll be serious contenders again. And, it could be a scenario like we saw with Down, where, Down lose the final and then end up coming back, a year later to win it. So, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens in regards to that. But obviously, running through the game and sort of discussing it in great detail. Look, Limerick started brilliant. They got that goal from Killian Fahy. And one thing I noticed about this Limerick side is that when they ran at the heart of Kildare's defence, they caused problems, and they didn't do it enough, in my opinion. They didn't go for goals enough, and they didn't run at them enough. There was chances in the second half as well where Josh Ryan would get a brilliant kick out, or even as well, Kildare would cough up the ball kind of further up the pitch, maybe at the edge of the arc, and Limerick would offload the ball and straight away, play it into the likes of Tommy Childs or even the likes of Tony McCarthy. But Limerick couldn't release the ball quick enough, or they didn't take advantage of those opportunities. I think the game was there for them in terms of goals, in my opinion. They ended up with 2 goals today. They could have definitely got a few more, because I do think Kildare's defence was a little bit vulnerable. But look, a big turning point in the game was probably from around the 10th minute. Kildare actually hit 1-7 without reply in the space of 10 minutes. And that really sort of took the game away from Limerick. They were absolutely chasing it after that. And whilst the second goal for Limerick did actually put them 2 points in front, it always felt like Kildare were in control. Great goal, obviously, from Alex Byrne. Brilliant finish. Dara Kirwan with some phenomenal 2-pointers in there as well. And I think for Kildare, having the players like Dara Kirwan, Callum Bolton, Colin Dalton, Ryan Sinky, like players who can kick 2-pointers, who can a great spread of scores, really. Whereas I felt like for Limerick, they probably were very reliant, I thought, on the likes of Peter Nash, who was probably Limerick's top forward. Danny Neville couldn't really, he kicked a point, but probably didn't have the influence maybe that you would have expected. And yeah, like it was one of them where Kildare were really on top after that, to be fair. Limerick done well to kind of bring themselves back into it, and obviously they get that second goal. A massive goal in that aspect from Killian Ryan. And yeah, Limerick couldn't really sort of turn the tide after that. Both sides were knackered as well. I mean, both sides were conceding the short kick out as well. A few kickouts maybe going astray from a Limerick perspective was maybe a little bit disappointing from them. But in the final 10 minutes, you could see Kildare probably did have a little bit more. And look, I think when you're able to bring Brian McLaughlin on as well, like 3 points from him, like what a phenomenal footballer he is as well. Probably getting a little bit more from Kildare's bench. It must be said. So, and look, it was nervy towards the end for Kildare. They were 4 points up. They had chances to go 5 up. They missed a free towards the end. A couple of other chances going astray. It probably shouldn't have been as nervy as it is. And if Kildare had conceded that late goal chance, they would have been absolutely kicking themselves, because to have thrown a 4-point lead away like that would have been massively disappointing. And maybe that showed the kind of inexperience a little bit from Kildare, where, look, it is a young team, it is a young group. It's not a team who's used to really being in these scenarios too much. And you could see that a little bit where, I remember Louth against Meath in the Leinster final, and for the final 5-6 minutes, they just kept the ball. Do you know what I mean? They just kept it, working it from side to side, didn't really give anything away. We saw a lot of the big teams do that. It was something that I think Kildare should have done. Look, they got away with it in the end. They won the game, so it won't really matter too much for them. But there was a little bit of inexperience there. But look, it is a team with tremendous talent, with tremendous potential as well. As I've said in previous videos, you look at Leinster football right now, lads, and I think there is an opportunity for Kildare to win a Leinster title in the next couple of years. Look, a lot of people would look at probably Meath now as the, if you were to call it right now, you'd probably say Meath are the favourites to win Leinster next year. Look, we'll see what happens with Dublin. Who will be the new manager? Could the new manager entice some players who have stepped away from the panel this year maybe to come back? Look, that could be a conversation, and that could make things a little bit interesting. But Kildare are in the mix. Absolutely. They are in the mix. And they have the forwards who can do damage as well. And like even Daniel Flynn, like he scored 1 point today. He was a little bit quiet. I think he went off with an injury. But you have players like him who can really, really kind of take a game away from an opposition team, and you still have other players to come through, like Kevin Feely. Today as well was very good with 2 points. Obviously, he's been around the panel for a long time, but you've other young players to kind of come through as well, potentially over the next few seasons, as well. So positive signs for Kildare, absolutely massive from their perspective. And look, I think the Leinster Football Championship, it's probably the first time, probably in a long time, that you're looking at Leinster and thinking it could be a very interesting championship next season. And I think in the All-Ireland series as well, you could have, 3-4 Leinster teams in there next year. Kildare are going to be a guarantee. You'll obviously have the Leinster champions next season. Look, it could be Kildare. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. And, it will certainly be interesting. Running through some comments here. Gavin says, I thought Kildare might do a Kildare and bottle a big game, but fair to them, they saw it through, weren't far off Leinster this year, could do something next year. Yeah, look, and it would have been very interesting to see how they would have gone on versus Meath in that Leinster final. They were very close to beating Louth that day. Louth just about kind of getting the edge in that semi-final. So it would have been very interesting to see how they would have done versus Meath. Looking at how brilliant Meath have been this year, it would be hard to kind of have backed against them. But then again, Louth did beat them in that Leinster final, so who knows? Maybe Kildare could have done similar. That way? Gavin says, as for Limerick, what a sickener with the amount of wides they had. Could be a massive missed opportunity if they don't get back here again. Overall, a good year, though. They kind of they panicked a little bit, didn't they? And again, there was probably a little bit of inexperience in those moments, like a couple of chances dropping short and going wide. As I said before, I think they could have worked more goal opportunities. I think Kildare's defence was quite vulnerable when Limerick were attacking them. And even towards the end of the game, for Limerick to get a clear shot off on goal, when Kildare very well knew that, it was the only hope for Limerick. And for them to kind of walk through Kildare like they did was probably a little bit alarming. But look, it's something for Kildare to work on, for Brian Flanagan to work on, and ultimately, look, they got over the line in the end. Connor says, massive congratulations to Limerick, though, in terms of the score. It was a bit better than last year. And Gavin says, hard to know who Kildare could drag into a relegation battle next year if Louth, Cavan or Cork have a bad start. And Connor says, in terms of the score, was a bit better game than last year. Oh, yeah, we said that one. Jared said, nobody gave Limerick a chance. Limerick could have beaten them. The future is bright for Limerick and the big ball. Yeah, absolutely. Look, and I said in my preview that, I predicted Kildare to win the game. I said it would be a 4-point game. And in the end, it was a little bit more narrow with the chances at the end of the game. But I wouldn't have been surprised had Limerick have won it, because look, they've beaten Wexford this year, they've beaten Westmeath, they've beaten some big teams, Limerick, this year, and they've had some great moments. But it was always like, Kildare have the talent. They have the talent. It was more so, could Kildare have an off day? Could they get a little bit nervous? Like, for example, when that second goal goes in for Limerick, from Killian Ryan, like, Kildare were a little bit rattled for 3, 4, 5 minutes. They hit a couple of wides after that, and they took a couple of minutes to get into their groove, and maybe that was a chance for Limerick to kind of put their foot on the gas and take it away from Kildare a little bit. But yeah, like, in terms of Kildare next year going into Division 2, I'm not too sure if they will be in a relegation battle. It's it's Division 2. Look, it's going to be very, very competitive next year. It'll be very, very hard to call it at this moment in time. It would take a very, very brave man. You would probably be looking at Offaly coming up next year, who could find it tough in there. It's going to be interesting to see, isn't it? But look, we'll have plenty of time to discuss that next year. Charlie says, what chance do you give Tyrone here? Look, I give Tyrone a great chance. And I was out and about earlier enjoying the sun, and goodness me, there's a lot of Tyrone fans in Dublin. And fair play to them. They've definitely brought huge numbers. I think Tyrone probably will outnumber the Kerry fans, I'd imagine, from what I've saw anyway. So look, they've a massive chance. They'll need to play a lot better than they did against Dublin. I think they'll need to play a lot better. It will depend on what version of Kerry turn up as well, because like, if Kerry play like they did for that kind of final half an hour, that second half versus Armagh, they could take the game away from Tyrone. But we haven't seen that consistently enough from Kerry. So look, Tyrone have a big chance. They'll need McCurry, Canavan, these lads to step up. But look, we certainly will be back after that game to discuss it further. Look, massive congratulations to Kildare. Look, they are rivals of Dublin. I've had plenty of back and forth with Kildare fans down the years and thrown them a bit of banter and everything else. And I know they've done the same with myself. But look, fair play to them. And I'm sure Kildare fans will probably say they tasted success in Croke Park this year and Dublin didn't. And look, we'll have to hold that L, to be fair. But look, fair play to Kildare. They got over the line. And look, as a Dublin fan, obviously I want us to continually dominate Leinster. But the neutral GA fan in me says, look, Leinster is going to be very exciting next year. You look at, as I said, Dublin are in the mix. Kildare are there. Meath are there. Louth are still going to be there. Even who's going to be their new manager. Offaly are rising at the moment. Wexford are going well. Leinster is looking as healthy as it has looked in a long, long time now. And I think that only makes it a better championship in my opinion. And yeah, Connor says, I've seen a video, but I don't know the new Sam Magor format as a down man. I'm not sure if we'll be in it next year. Yeah, it will all depend on the draw, mate. Like, if you win Division 3, should be enough, I'd say. And look, I think you'd be good enough to win Division 3 next year. So you should be in the All-Ireland series, but again, it could just depend on draws and everything else, that way. But we'll see what happens. Charlie says, need to find the Ulster Championship levels again. Yeah, absolutely. But look, congratulations to Kildare, commiserations to Limerick. They can hang their heads high as well, to be fair. Like, they were absolutely brilliant today in different stages. And, I don't see them being in any trouble next year in Division 3. I think they could be an outside shout of promotion. Look, the last time they were in Division 3, or last time they were promoted from 4 to 3, they went up to 2, and that was under Billy Lee. So it could happen. They have the players, they have the potential to do it. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. But yeah, no, massive congratulations to Kildare fans. So look, we'll be back after the Tyrone and Kerry game. Very much looking forward to that. So we'll chat to you all then. Hit the like button and subscribe if you could. Helps the channel out. Speak to you all then.